annual level. According to the WHO, as of April 2021, almost 70 preventive immunization campaigns in over 60 countries remain postponed due to COVID-19. And routine immunization coverage is down globally, including in the United States. As a global immunization community, we must not lose track of these missed children, and we must close the gaps that hinder the equitable delivery and access to all vaccines in childhood and throughout the lifespan. I am delighted, however, we in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis and the Caribbean region by extension have much to celebrate, having achieved a high immunization rate and subsequent elimination of smallpox, polio, rubella, and measles, among others. At the local level, the Federation's National Immunization Program, which includes vaccines for the prevention of the diseases mentioned above, boasts of an admirable childhood immunization success rate of 96 to 98% birth to grade 6, which is the envy of many countries. In addition to the common childhood vaccines, the influenza vaccine was introduced in the St. Kitts and Nevis immunization program in 2018 with focus on 4 clientele groups identified as high risk. The targeted groups are healthcare workers, pregnant women, older adults, and persons with chronic diseases. Further, the human papilloma vaccine, HPV, was introduced into the St. Kitts and Nevis National Immunization Program in October 2019 to grade 6 students with an impressive 92% coverage, having seen 758 students vaccinated from a target population of 824. The ministry is confident that the Federation is therefore on a trajectory to mitigate the incidence of the related strain of cervical cancer in our efforts to combat NCDs. Of interest is the fact that the Federation also offers the yellow fever vaccine on request to persons traveling to countries that are endemic for yellow fever infection, and over the period 2018 to 2020, 432 doses were administered. It is therefore appropriate at this juncture to applaud the Ministry of Health for its robust immunization program, as well as to commend the persistent, successful efforts of our community health nurses who have been relentless in their endeavors to promote a diverse level of immunization within the country. Vaccination Week 2021 is being commemorated under the theme, Vaccines Bring Us Closer. This is indeed a compelling reminder of the power and strength of vaccines to save lives through collective efforts and successful immunization campaigns. Further, the theme is even more important when at this juncture, globally, the world is confronted with the coronavirus pandemic that is wreaking devastating havoc on lives and livelihoods. In an era when all of us have been forced to engage in unappeasable social and physical distancing and the wearing of face masks, indeed, only vaccines and immunization can foster physical proximity and bring us closer to each other. As more people are protected from COVID-19 through vaccination, our goals of achieving maximal closeness again, reducing travel restrictions, masking and distancing requirements will undoubtedly be closer to attainment. Clearly, not only have vaccines protected us for decades, but it has been proven that vaccines will continue to help us with our usual traditional existential way of life. Unquestionably, the COVID-19 vaccines will allow us to freely gather safely, whether for work, leisure, learning, duty, or worship, will facilitate the building of bridges across generations, protecting the very young and old by preventing disease transmission within households and among caregivers. And certainly, The vaccine will bring us closer to our own potential, enabling the immunized to thrive across the lifespan, safeguarded from dangerous and debilitating vaccine-preventable diseases. It is the ministry's fervent desire to see our citizens and residents venture out into communities, the workplace, and the wider world with confidence to contribute and thrive throughout their lifespan. But this can only be realized with the COVID-19 vaccine. I am very pleased at this particular point, therefore, to affirm the ministry's position relative to the continued adequacy of our health system to effectively roll out the COVID-19 vaccine, especially when the Federation, we already have an exceptional best practice mechanism, the National Immunization Program. It is upon this existing, tested, proven, and excellent good system that our COVID-19 vaccination immunization is based for the efficient administration of the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine. Clearly, vaccination is not a new concept to our country, and one can conclude with a childhood immunization rate of over 96%, our citizens are accustomed to vaccination. With the COVID-19 vaccine, there will be no difference. Surely, it has become an imperative to depend on effective vaccines to help us turn the tide of this pandemic. However, the tide can only be turned when we reach a large number of our population, no matter where they live or who they are. If we fail to achieve this, the impact on our health and socio-economic systems will take months or even years to reverse. Consequently, as we commemorate Immunization Week, the Ministry of Health will vigorously engage in its COVID-19 vaccination campaign and remains committed to demonstrate the value of vaccines for the health of children, communities, and the world. Show how routine immunization is the foundation for strong, resilient health systems and universal health coverage. Maintain capacity in vaccination and highlight the need to build on immunization progress while addressing recognized gaps. Conduct successful mass vaccination campaigns safely during the COVID-19 pandemic. Monitor and supervise cold chain and vaccine management, and activities to strengthen community engagement and vaccine confidence, recognizing that doses are limited. Residents and citizens, this week, Vaccination Week, is a time to promote and celebrate the life-saving power of vaccines. Let us approach it with an acute sense of urgency. History has shown us that after wars or epidemics, if we allow large gaps in immunization coverage, vaccine-preventable diseases can emerge or re-emerge. As the clarion call is made for this World Immunization Week, the Ministry of Health is immensely appreciative of the invaluable role of its frontline and essential workers, its partners, caregivers, government, private sector, charitable organizations, and every person, family, and community working collaboratively to ensure that vaccines bring us closer to a vision of a country and a world in which everyone, everywhere, is protected from vaccine-preventable diseases, disabilities, and death. So, let's step it up. Don't wait. Vaccinate. May God bless us all.
As we celebrate our 19th Vaccination Week in the Americas and the 10th World Immunization Week, I find myself reflecting on how far we've come since our last Vaccination Week in April 2020. Last year at this time, there were so many unknowns about COVID-19, and the prospect of having vaccines to protect us seemed so far away. Although 2021 finds us still in the midst of the pandemic, we are now a step closer to regaining some sense of normalcy. And that is due to the momentous development of safe and effective vaccines against COVID 19. The arrival of the COVID 19 vaccines in the region of the Americas has not been what we all hoped it would be. I know how hard it has been to wait for COVID 19 vaccines, especially after the very difficult year that we've had. We long to be with our family and friends, to travel, and to enjoy many of the things that we did and took for granted before the pandemic. I also know that while some of us cannot wait to be vaccinated against COVID 19, others have concerns about these vaccines. Please note that strong surveillance systems are in place to detect any unusual or unexpected occurrences post-vaccination. However, I implore you to please get vaccinated when it is your turn to do so. Vaccines are a critical tool for protecting us from COVID 19. We are already seeing that fewer people are falling ill, being hospitalized, and dying from COVID 19 in places where vaccination coverage is more advanced. Now, while we are focused on rolling out COVID 19 vaccines, let us not forget the importance of routine
it's me, Mr. HE, and I'm here with one message: roll up to roll out. We all know how difficult things have been during this COVID-19 pandemic. While we continue to wash our hands, wear our face mask, and practice social distancing, how about we take it one step further and get vaccinated? Call the nearest health center to find out if you are eligible to be vaccinated. Or you can contact the Ministry of Health at any one of these numbers down below. Don't be discouraged by the negativity. We all have a role to play in protecting this federation. So, St. Kitts and Nevis, let's roll up to roll out.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Leadership Matters, which is hosted weekly by the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris. He uses this forum to keep you, the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, up to date with what's happening in the Federation. Every week, he is joined by key officials in the private and public sector. And this evening, his special guests are Chief Medical Officer in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Hazel Laws, Medical Chief of Staff at the JNF General Hospital, Dr. Cameron Wilkinson, and Chief Executive Officer at the St. Kitts Tourism Authority, Raquel Brown. At the start of each program, we begin with opening remarks from the Prime Minister and his guests. And at this moment, we will now hear from the host of the program, Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris. Mr. Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Let me begin by extending best wishes and greetings to all watching and listening this edition of Leadership Matters. I am encouraged by informed reports that Leadership Matters continues to be the most comprehensive, interactive, and informative discussion program on the policies, actions, and performance of the people's government. I shall endeavor and indeed commit to make myself available regularly to host this quintessential example of democracy and good governance at work. I thank the thousand here and afar who tune in regularly to be informed on serious matters of state. My fellow citizens and residents, we are now approaching 6 months since the reopening of our borders fully to commercial, regional, and international travel. As a government, acting on the advice of our experts, we believe we have taken the measures necessary to provide us with the best possible protocols for our continued safety in light of the ongoing dangerous threat of COVID-19. As a result, we have the least number of COVID-19 cases, and all COVID-19 cases are now fully recovered. We recorded no deaths owing to COVID-19, and our health system is functioning reasonably well. I encourage all of us to continue to do our part to be as safe as possible. Please get vaccinated if you have not yet done so. From the full opening of our borders on the 31st October 2020 to April 24, 2021, passenger throughput at our airport was put at 10,994 from 3,191 flights. Global travel is down as a consequence of COVID-19. Tourist arrivals will recover when more persons get vaccinated and confidence in the safety of global travel is restored. Vaccination, of course, is a key factor affecting safety and confidence in travel. We rolled out our vaccination program on February 22nd. Over 12,000 persons have had their first shot of the vaccine. There is a global shortage of vaccines, and some powerful countries are now stockpiling vaccines beyond their own needs. The United States of America, for example, has 60 million doses of AstraZeneca vaccine, which it does not need, and contractual arrangements are reported to be in place for a further 300 million doses of AstraZeneca vaccine. The United States of America recently shared 4 million doses of this vaccine with Canada and Mexico. CARICOM has asked that we in the region be accorded some of that stockpile. Yes, vaccines are scarce globally, and they are of short shelf life. With the countries producing the vaccines insisting now that they must get priority attention, it has become very challenging for small states like those in CARICOM to access enough vaccines in the time frame we need to secure them. In this regard, I must record my thanks to the government and people of India for their generosity in supplying us with some 20,000 doses of the vaccine. We stand in solidarity and strong friendship with India, now being rocked by an unprecedented upsurge in COVID-19 cases. And we urge those countries that can to be very generous in their support to India. Here in St. Kitts, we have vaccines available, and I want to urge our people again to get vaccinated. The longer you delay, it is likely that vaccines may not be available when you decide that you are ready. Now is really the accepted time. Do not wait until you contract COVID-19 at home, at work, or at an event to get vaccinated. Please protect yourself now. The vaccine here is free. In the United Kingdom, in Canada, and the USA, persons are waiting anxiously for their appointment. Here in St. Kitts and Nevis, there is no waiting. You can go to any of the 17 health centers from Monday to Friday from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. to be vaccinated. Fortunately, too, every Saturday between 9 a.m. to 12 noon, you can go to health centers in McKnight, in Newtown, in Tabernacle, St. Paul's, and Sandy Point. And some health centers and Nevis are open on some Saturdays in order to facilitate your being vaccinated. The recent lockdown in Anguilla reminds us that we are not safe until we get vaccinated. Anguilla was doing very well until recently it had a cluster spread. School children, teachers, and parents and guardians are all affected there. To date, Anguilla now has 80 confirmed cases and counting. As of yesterday, there were 51 newly diagnosed cases linked to the cluster. Anguillans are now rushing to get the vaccines. We in St. Kitts and Nevis know that COVID-19 kills. It has caused the death of more than 3 million persons around the world and over 9,000 deaths in the Caribbean. Do not take a chance with a deadly disease. Please protect yourself. Get vaccinated soonest. Vaccination provides the pathway to the stronger and safer future of job growth, high incomes, and increased opportunities, especially for our young people. Many persons here are part of the 255 million persons around the world who lost their jobs or are forced to survive and reduce incomes as a consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic. For us to put them back to work on a permanent basis, We need them and every adult to get vaccinated. The sooner we do this, the better and stronger we will be, and the more resources we will have to put our country on a stronger and safer path to recovery. I want to offer commendations to the 12,298 plus persons representing just over 37% of our target population who took time to get the vaccines as of today, April 27, 2021. Come the first week of May, thousands of others will be stepping forward to take the second dose of the AstraZeneca vaccines. Over the last couple of weeks, we have listened to the calls and requests for some changes in our COVID-19 protocols for persons who are fully vaccinated. That is, those who have taken 2 doses of a 2-dose regimen vaccine. Based on the recommendations of our health experts, my cabinet has approved the following beneficial changes for those who are fully vaccinated as part of our phased response to the evolving COVID-19 situation. Cabinet has approved that we shall reduce the quarantine period currently now in place. Our medical experts have recommended that we reduce the quarantine period for the fully vaccinated inbound air travelers to St. Kitts and Nevis from 14 days to 9 days effective the 1st of May. I want to repeat that. The quarantine period for inbound air travelers to St. Kitts and Nevis has been reduced from 14 days to 9 days effective the 1st May 2021. Effective May 20th, fully vaccinated spectators can access venues of amateur and recreational sporting events, for example, football matches, basketball matches, athletic meets, etc. Our Chief Medical Officer will address the conditionality for this, I am sure, tonight. Fully vaccinated cultural and entertainment events can be favorably considered whereby only fully vaccinated patrons are allowed entrance. This has a recommended start date of July 19, 2021. Mixed events, that is, events at which both vaccinated and non-vaccinated patrons participate, these events must continue to adhere to existing protocols. Weddings, for example, funerals, and church services can be considered examples of mixed events where both the vaccinated and non-vaccinated congregate. For those events, the existing protocols remain as they are now. Additionally, it is anticipated that the first cruise ship will return to St. Kitts and Nevis on or about the 17th of July, 2021. This means, of course, an opportunity for our fully vaccinated taxi operators, restaurateurs, and all those who benefit from cruise tourism. A speedy rollout of our vaccination program can yield much more economic and broader societal benefits for us here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Just as our being low risk for COVID-19 brought the Federation 2 movies so far, and 5 more to be produced here this year, achieving herd immunity will yield other economic benefits. Being the first to be fully vaccinated or to achieve herd immunity can put us at the top of the list for cruise and other tourism segments. How well it would be for us if, because of our status as a fully vaccinated country, people felt safe and everyone wanted to vacation here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Imagine it, hotels filled to capacity, taxis will have a bonanza, Brimstone Hill, Scenic Railway, Sky Safari, for example, would begin taking bookings months in advance. Operators of water taxis, the catamaran, fishing excursions will all be doing very well. Foreign exchange will be earned and our people will be put back to work. We in St. Kitts and Nevis can make this reality happen. What if we can reach our threshold or close enough of herd immunity earlier than anticipated? There be crowds and revelers close to what we are accustomed. I am sure that Wasim Richards can put together something extra special for his 4-in-1 fete, currently not on the calendar. And if we were all vaccinated, we could think about a healthy crowd of enthusiasts at the Nevis Athletic Stadium for Culturama Games. Imagine us in September, back to gathering at Warner Park in St. Kitts and the El Comida Willard Park in Nevis to watch the parade and celebrate our nation's independence. Think of our upcoming Sugar Mass 50. We can have the return of Cooler Fete, Inception, and Juve. All these and more are doable if we meet our target for herd immunity. Let us approach this with that same sense of shared responsibility and national purpose that have made us the envy of the region. We as a country have been able to avoid costly borrowing and run thus far on the savings that we had set aside prudently in the precious years of plenty. But it is time for the country to start earning revenues again. It is in your hands and in the hands of all of us. Tonight, I want to especially welcome the panelists on tonight's edition. We have with us our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Hazel Laws, and our Medical Chief of Staff, Dr. Cameron Wilkinson. They have both given yeoman service to our country in this its most taxing time of COVID-19. With us also is the CEO of the Tourism Authority, Ms. Raquel Brown. Our tourism plant is the last key sector of our economy to get on the path of sustainable recovery. We will learn more about the plans for the future from Mrs. Brown's presentation. In closing, I say thank you to all who have been praying for me, my family, our people, and country. And I pledge to do all that I can do to keep my people and country safe. May God bless us all. I thank you for tuning in.
Thank you so much, Mr. Prime Minister. We'll now hear from the Chief Medical Officer in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Hazel Laws.
Thank you, Ms. Bryan, and a pleasant good evening to everyone. The COVID-19 pandemic has shown us how devastating an infectious disease can be without access to vaccines to control it. COVID-19 has infected 147.5 million persons and killed at least 3.1 million persons in the world since last January, according to data by the World Health Organization. A second wave of the pandemic is raging in India, which reported over 300,000 new cases for the 6th consecutive day yesterday. COVID-19 cases continue to increase in the Caribbean region, with 11,853 confirmed cases and 161 deaths reported by the 9 Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. Our sister island, Anguilla, is trying to contain a cluster of COVID-19 cases it first identified last week, Wednesday. In less than 1 week, 55 persons linked to the cluster have been identified through contact tracing and found to be positive. That is 50 adults and 5 children. It is alleged that this rapid change in COVID-19 status has been linked to entrance of undocumented or irregular migrants into Anguilla from St. Martin. In St. Kitts and Nevis, we must be wise and learn from this occurrence. We must strengthen our border surveillance. All of society is required to help monitor our porous borders and report to the police any illegal boat movements and the presence of strange faces in our communities. We have since learned that health professionals in Anguilla have been experiencing a challenge with vaccine hesitancy, like us. Some persons in Anguilla have adopted a wait-and-see approach to accepting the COVID-19 vaccine. We must all agree that those who have recently been diagnosed with the disease ran out of time. In our federation, we have reported 44 cases so far, and all cases have recovered. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now 41 days since we have identified our last case. Our COVID-19 vaccine rollout was launched 9 weeks ago with 12,298 vaccine doses administered. More specifically, 9,326 doses in St. Kitts and 2,972 doses in Nevis. In other words, we have covered 37.2% of the target population and 26.1% of the total population with the first dose. Please note that the vaccines have a limited shelf life, and our goal is to use up all the vaccines by the end of June. Today, vaccines are our best hope in ending this pandemic and rebuilding our local economy, the economy in the region, and that of the rest of the world. Over 20 years of coronavirus research and substantial public and private financial support paved the way for the development of COVID-19 vaccines that are presently on the market. During this week, Vaccination Week in the Americas, the spotlight will be on the COVID-19 vaccines. Vaccination Week in the Americas is being celebrated between April the 24th to 30th under the theme, Vaccines Bring Us Closer, #GetVax. This year's awareness campaign will highlight the value of COVID-19 vaccines and all vaccines in preventing infectious diseases, maintaining health, and bringing people together. What are the benefits of the AstraZeneca-Oxford vaccine? The Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine was approved by the WHO for emergency use listing. The AstraZeneca-Oxford vaccine is effective. It is effective in preventing the disease. It provides you an 83% risk reduction in contracting COVID. It is effective in preventing severe COVID, and it's effective in preventing death from COVID-19. The AstraZeneca-Oxford vaccine works well in older people. Results from the US study confirmed vaccine efficacy of as high as 85% in those over 65 years after 2 doses given 4 weeks apart. The AstraZeneca-Oxford vaccine provides protection against the emerging SARS-CoV-2 variants. There is high vaccine efficacy against the UK variant, and it provides some protection against the other two variants, the one from South Africa and the one identified in Brazil. The latest scientific information suggests that the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine reduces transmission of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, but more data is required to determine the true extent of the reduction. Researchers in Israel and the UK estimate that there is approximately 60% reduction in one's ability to transmit the SARS-CoV-2 virus post-vaccination. We are awaiting more scientific data regarding reduction in transmission after you would have been vaccinated. This vaccine has a wide global reach. Some 142 countries globally have received and are receiving millions of doses of this vaccine through the multilateral COVAX facility. Our aim is to empower you, the people, with the latest information about the benefits of the COVID-19 vaccine such that you can make an informed decision. The goal is to increase demand for and acceptance of the vaccine. In the Federation, we would like to attain the herd immunity threshold by vaccinating 70% of the population at the soonest. However, if we continue at the present pace, it will take us a few years to achieve this goal, and our economy would be decimated by then. Ladies and gentlemen, be empowered and accept the vaccine. Hashtag vaccines work. Hashtag do not wait, vaccinate. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Laws. We'll now hear from the Chief Medical Staff at the JNF General Hospital, Dr. Cameron Wilkinson.
With the current rate at which the vaccinations are being rolled out, we will not reach herd immunity by October as previously projected. If we open up the country before reaching herd immunity, we will be absorbing risk with the distinct possibility of the return of the virus and the development of community spread as persons will not be adequately protected. If we get an overwhelming proportion of the population vaccinated before the scheduled opening, the virus will have nowhere to go, even if it returns. The hope was that, provided with the information about safety and efficacy of vaccines, persons would voluntarily come forward and do the right thing and get vaccinated. 12,298 persons have already done the right thing and taken their first shot. 20,739 more persons need to hasten their steps and follow the example. The question I would like to ask is, can a case be made for mandatory vaccination or the use of coercion or force in getting persons to do the right thing? My reference is from the Journal of Medical Ethics from the University of Oxford. Mandatory vaccination is typically justified on the grounds of harm to others. From a public health perspective, the use of coercion and restriction of liberty is considered when an infected individual runs the risk of harming others. Getting vaccinated benefits the individual and helps in preventing disease transmission. If the benefits are only to the individual, it is more difficult to support a mandatory vaccination policy. There is a strong case for making any vaccine mandatory or compulsory if 4 conditions are met. These are: 1, there is a grave threat to public health; 2, the vaccine is safe and effective; 3, mandatory vaccination has a superior cost-benefit profile compared with other alternatives, in this case, voluntary vaccination; and 4, the level of coercion or force is proportionate. In other words, the penalties or costs for non-compliance are proportionate. Each of these conditions involve value judgments. Vaccine hesitancy is a real problem, and despite widespread education programs on the vaccine, there are many who still remain rooted in their anti-vax positions, even at the expense of the health and safety of others and the future of businesses where they work. Recently, a number of businesses came out with strong recommendations to their employees to increase the vaccination rate and make their work environment safe. This was met with much criticism. But can coercion be justified from a public health perspective? Let us examine each of these 4 hurdles that need to be crossed and see if a case can be made from a public health perspective for organizations, businesses, or even government to nudge persons in the direction of getting vaccinated. 1. Is there a grave threat to public health caused by the virus? So far, there have been over 3 million deaths attributed to COVID-19. The case fatality rate can be as high as 4%. Even among survivors, there are long-term consequences for those who have been infected but survive. The immunity from natural infection is also not lifelong, as is the case in some diseases. Therefore, survivors can be reinfected if they're not vaccinated. In addition to the public health crisis we now face, the long-term COVID-19 health implications may present a grave future public health problem. We saw last year how the health systems in Europe and North America were overwhelmed, and now how India's health system is on the brink of disaster as it struggles to contain the virus, with hospital resources being stretched by COVID patients and basics like oxygen running short. We see how overnight Anguilla went from 0 to 55 active cases and are now on a 14-day lockdown. There is therefore no doubt that COVID-19 is a grave threat to public health and at a moment's notice can overwhelm our health system. 2, are the vaccines safe and effective? Globally, more than 1.04 billion doses have been administered thus far, with a significant reduction in hospitalizations and deaths in some countries. The vaccine we are using here is the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, which has been through 3 stages of clinical trials and has been found to be safe and effective. Over 34 million doses have already been administered in Europe alone. The efficacy is 76% after the first dose and rises to 82.4% after the second dose. It's 100% effective against severe disease and hospitalization after 2 doses. There were reports of 220 persons developing clots out of 34 million persons in Europe, at an incidence of 1 for 153,000 doses given, if all these cases were actually attributed to the vaccine. But this has not been proven. In the ideal world, one would like a vaccine to be 100% safe and effective with 0 risk, but that is not possible with any vaccine or medication. We therefore say that the benefits way outweigh the risk. These benefits include preventing disease in individuals, preventing severe disease, hospitalizations and deaths, effectiveness in reducing community spread, decreasing caseloads to prevent exhaustion of the healthcare system, and the protection of children and older adults who cannot be vaccinated for medical reasons. All experts have concluded that the vaccines available, including the AstraZeneca vaccine, are safe and effective. 3, is mandatory vaccination better than the alternative, which is allowing persons to come forward voluntarily? The popular position is that we do not need mandatory vaccination because people are self-interested and altruistic enough to come forward for vaccination. It is therefore hoped that we will reach herd immunity without mandatory vaccination. Here in the Federation, we need to vaccinate 33,037 persons to reach herd immunity threshold of 70%. How fast we reach herd immunity is also important. In a pandemic, time is lives. We do not have any active cases now, but it's only a matter of time before the next case arrives with the possibility of community spread, as we see in almost every other country around the world. The longer it takes to reach herd immunity, more persons will become infected, severely ill, and may die from the disease once the virus returns. Even when national herd immunity is achieved, local areas can fall below that level over time, causing outbreaks. This is especially likely to happen where persons opposed to vaccines tend to gather in clusters. So ideally, We need better than herd immunity to ensure that people are protected both over time and in every place. Based on the current rate of vaccinations, there is good reason to doubt whether a policy of voluntary vaccination will be good enough to get us to herd immunity in ample time. We, however, continue to expand our education program with targeted messaging to get persons on board voluntarily. And the fourth hurdle, coercion, is proportionate. In public health ethics, there is a familiar concept of the least restrictive alternative. The least restrictive alternative is the option which achieves a given outcome with the least coercion and least restriction of liberty. A modest penalty for not being vaccinated in a grave public health emergency could be justifiable. For example, restriction of movement of unvaccinated individuals can be justified in the interest of public health. We have seen this already being implemented with requirements of being fully vaccinated to be able to travel, or reduced or no quarantine periods for vaccinated travelers in some countries, or being vaccinated a requirement to attend mass gatherings. So how great a sacrifice or loss of liberty can be justified? A decision to have only vaccinated spectators at the Caribbean Premier League to be held here in August is justified, as it will significantly reduce the chance of this becoming a super spreader event. The decision to only have fully vaccinated individuals at other sporting events like football, basketball, and athletic meets is also justified in the interest of public health. The cost to an individual is small in the act of getting vaccinated, but the benefits to all are tremendous. Also, the harm to others by choosing not to get vaccinated is large. For some, the ultimate cost is their life. There is therefore a moral obligation to get vaccinated. Individually and collectively, we have a moral obligation and duty to get vaccinated so businesses can return to normal, so our lives can return to normal, so our country can return to normal. While being vaccinated remains an individual and voluntary decision that is free of cost, lockdowns and curfews to contain community spread caused by one's irresponsible actions are mandatory and come at great cost to the individual and society. There is therefore a strong case to be made for organizations, businesses, and governmental departments to use some level of coercion to help hasten the march towards herd immunity. Our tourism sector, for example, cannot safely open if the port workers, hotel workers, taxi drivers, and restaurant workers are not fully vaccinated. Teachers who choose not to be vaccinated should not be putting the lives of kids they teach at risk, as these kids are not eligible to be vaccinated and remain vulnerable to the disease and are dependent on the adults around them for protection. Persons working in institutions like prisons and nursing homes have a moral responsibility to do the right thing and get vaccinated as a matter of urgency, as their inaction can lead to cluster spread in these institutions where they work. Healthcare workers and other essential workers who are in regular contact with the general public have a moral responsibility to protect themselves and those who they serve through vaccination. Our security forces, the police and the army, who made an oath to protect us, should all first protect themselves by getting vaccinated. We can all see, therefore, that there is a strong case to be made from a public health perspective to mandate vaccinations for certain sectors of society. We, however, continue to urge persons to come forward voluntarily to protect themselves and others. Herd immunity benefits society collectively, so it's only fair that the responsibility of reaching it be shared evenly among society's individual members. I do believe that we can reach herd immunity if we all work together and do the right thing and roll up our sleeves voluntarily and get vaccinated. No stone must, however, be left unturned in protecting the life of each and every citizen and resident of this blessed federation, especially those who are dependent on herd immunity for protection. Let us put country above self and protect those who cannot protect themselves and get vaccinated. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wilkinson. And just a slight correction to my introduction for you earlier, that should be Medical Chief of Staff at the JNF General Hospital. We'll now hear from the Chief Executive Officer at the St. Kitts Tourism Authority, Raquel Brown.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister, for allowing me back this evening. We're at this time in the global space, adjusting to still so much and learning so much about the pandemic. The Prime Minister just made an announcement as it relates to vaccinated travelers and the reduction of quarantine. And so we know that there will be a lot of questions put towards the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Laws, and also the Federal COVID-19 Task Force as how we will proceed for this, especially for those visitors who will be vaccination in place for 7 days. However, we have to realize that still we are in a pandemic, and it doesn't mean that we get to proceed without taking caution. If we do not take every step to mitigate what is happening, we can end up like Anguilla, and there are many other countries within the Caribbean that are known tourism destinations that still have community spread. So for us in the tourism industry, for both the Ministry of Tourism and the St. Kitts Tourism Authority, we're really pleading with our tourism stakeholders to understand that the only way that for everyone to benefit from tourism and have the impact of the trickle-down effect that it does provide to even the mechanic who used to repair buses for taxi operators that no longer is doing that. We need to understand that vaccination is our only hope. We cannot return to some point in time what 2019 was, where we ended at 1 million cruise ship passengers and we had over 130,000 stayover visitors. For us to go back to those days of 2019, we have to look to an answer, and the answer that we have only available is vaccination that will allow tourists to come here, enjoy themselves, to reduce the risk of our nationals and our residents from exposing themselves to persons high risk and also themselves being at risk. As you all would have heard and the Prime Minister spoke to a while ago, our first cruise is with Seabourn Cruise Line, and it is scheduled to arrive here on July 17th. Please note, 2 weeks ago we spoke about the phased approach to the resumption of cruise, and it is a phased approach as we had with Stayover when we reopened our borders October 31st. At this time, we will only have bubble vaccinated tours operating, and this is not to force anyone to take the vaccine. I'd like to reiterate that. It is not forcing anyone to take the vaccine. However, how can the destination sell tours when passengers are required to be vaccinated and crew are required to be vaccinated by cruise lines? How then can we market the destination to say that we're maintaining our record of being safe if we also do not have bubble vaccinated tours, meaning that our tour operators and our attraction operators are not vaccinated? We hoped that in June the cruises would have resumed, but so far the first cruise is designated for July 17 by Seabourn. For those of you who know, Seabourn is a very high-end cruise line, and it is not a huge ship, it's not a mega ship, but it is a substantial ship that will be coming to St. Kitts. And as we like to say in St. Kitts, one of the reasons for our success is that we basically marketed and worked hard for basically every cruise line to come to St. Kitts, and Seabourn is our first. As I said, the first phase is vaccinated bubble tours only. It's not a mandate, but it is to keep us safe. We also hope that those tour operators and attraction operators, because you will be vaccinated, within your home also you'll be vaccinated. You've heard both Dr. Laws and you've heard Dr. Wilkinson speak to families and protecting our little ones, our young ones. If you are not vaccinated, you run the risk of exposing at a higher level your family to COVID-19, and our little ones really need to be protected. We've also, in our discussions, to ensure that we keep all communication clear, all cruise lines coming into the Federation are to have the discussions with the Minister of Tourism, Minister Lindsay Grant, or through the St. Kitts Tourism Authority. Also, under the guidance of the Chief Medical Officer, all crew and passengers, I will reiterate, over 18 years old must be vaccinated. For those persons who are under 18 children, they must have a negative RT-PCR test taken 72 hours prior to home port departure. And also this will be also applicable to all crew and passengers. The home port for Seabourn is Barbados, and they, at this point in time, they are ensuring that their crew will be vaccinated. As per the guidelines through our CMO and CARPA, the equivalent of CDC, the approved vaccines for persons coming by cruise at this point in time are AstraZeneca, Moderna, Pfizer-BioNTech, and Johnson & Johnson, because it was recently reapproved. Please understand that all travel approved tours and attractions. We know that within the industry we may have larger businesses, but they also do subcontract out their work to smaller taxi and tour operators over the years, because we have done so well with cruise. Those subcontractors will also have to be vaccinated. Also, travel approved tours and attractions will have to be inspected, and ensuring that to get the seal, your staff have gone through the training and that you meet the requirements of the Ministry of Health and also the St. Kitts Tourism Authority. Please also understand this is not just about the private sector. This also includes SCASPA staff, immigration, customs, anyone interacting with the ship, the cruise vessel while it is in port. It is most important that we understand we can't have an individual that is not vaccinated, as it is a concern as it relates to where we sit, and we really would like for Seabourn to be a success. We saw last August when Sea Dreams, the Fred Olsen cruise was not successful. Persons thought that it could just work with protocols and testing. We now know that that cannot work. Vaccination is the way out for us, and if we really would like to have a success story for cruise, because we do not live on our own like stayover, it's built on itineraries including other cruise destinations, we have to ensure that we're doing our part to ensure that persons here interacting with the vessels are vaccinated. We are also encouraging for employers, tour operators, those persons who own their own businesses, to please do random testing, and this will be guided by the CMO and the guidelines at the employers or the owner's cost. This is for your vaccinated staff only. For taxi operators and attraction owners, we also say that please consider at this point in time what the testing requirements are going to be, what the quarantine requirements could be, what isolation for your staff. These are now costs that must be taken into consideration as we're moving to reopen cruise, and also with now the acknowledgement of, the reduction of the quarantine from 14 to 9 days. This is very, very important, because for the next couple of years we're living with COVID, and we have to understand that this is going to be a cost that speaks to the operations of whatever your tourism entity is. It cannot be excluded. So we're really asking taxi and tour operators, as we transition through this period of continuing the phased approach, because we are open but with new requirements and with cruise, to take into consideration what is happening. We have agreed to work with the Ministry of Health and other government entities to see if we can also get a discounted rate for GNF for the COVID-19 testing, and then also speak to our private sector for those locations that have quarantine. What can we do for the tourism sector? we're in a difficult situation for those persons who we understand. There could be medical reasons, there could be personal reasons. They do not want to take the vaccine. We have to understand, and we'll take that in stride. However, we are also saying that that requirement is, as per the guidance of the CMO, there will be regular RT-PCR testing, and that will be at the employee's cost to work. Now, this does not mean that persons who are not vaccinated will be allowed to work in the vaccinated bubble tours. No. Only bubble vaccinated tours will be allowed to operate at this point in time, because it is the safest way, especially for crews, for us to ensure that we have a very successful phased process of reopening crews. We have had discussions with the neighboring destinations that are sharing the itinerary through the Ministry of Tourism, and the Ministry of Tourism for the other destinations, and it is important that we've recognized that each destination is going to have their own protocols. And for this to really work, for this to be a success, we all have to have basic minimum protocols to operate. And we had a call today, and we have basically agreed on some of the following. For those who are going to be home porting out of Barbados, specifically for the seaborne cruise, all passengers are required to submit a negative RT-PCR test 72 hours prior to the arrival at their home port. The 4 vaccinations from PAHO and WHO that are certified that I mentioned earlier, AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, and Pfizer-BioNTech. There's also the consideration that even though they have submitted their tests and they've been approved to go on the vessel, rapid tests are going to be required before, as a last-minute check for them before they board the physical vessel for home ports in the OECS and Barbados. There are some destinations that are not on this because they're not a part of OECS and Barbados, so therefore we could not include them, because only the OECS and Barbados at this point in time, as it speaks to St. Kitts specifically, and we know the itineraries that we are on, specifically for Seabourn for July 17th, we're speaking about. We all agreed it's very important to have a corridor of containment from gangway to gangway, and St. Kitts in this conversation was the only destination that basically had vaccinated bubble tours or attractions. And we suggested that this was the best way to ensure that we had a success. And so this is for common thought as it speaks to other destinations. And there were other destinations, including the home port, Barbados, that agreed to this. I can't say if there were others that didn't, but basically we have all agreed that for this itinerary to be successful, we all have to have the minimum standards. Also, it was discussed that guests will not be permitted to integrate with the public, so someone cannot come off in Port Zante and walk through the arrivals hall and come into Basseterre. Similarly, in other destinations, we felt that at minimum, even if there was this concern about bubble vaccinated tours because of the availability of vaccines in the respective destinations, we must ensure that we minimize risk and not mix with guests in the general public. And this, we understand, for those in the OECS and Barbados, was not something that they had an issue with. It's also important, and this came up, there are persons who may want to come off the gangway and they're just not listening. We do have sometimes passengers who do not listen. If they participate in an unapproved tour, it was agreed that they will have to disembark the vessel and pay for their return flight back to their home port. It would not be at the cost of their agent nor the destination. And this was to encourage cruise passengers to adhere to bubble vaccinated tours. I welcome, and I'm sure many persons in the tourism sector, the 9-day quarantine process, mandatory process. And at this time, we have been promoting the destination in the marketplace from April 1st. There has been a lot of interest in St. Kitts and Nevis respectively. However, there were just concerns about the quarantine and what it entailed. However, at this point in time, I'm glad that we did take the initiative to start the promotion on April 1st. It will run until September 5th, the Labor Day weekend. So we have a huge travel window, and persons now, I believe, with the reduced quarantine period, and hopefully those persons staying 1 to 7 days, we will see what the CMO comes back and advises what is permissible in terms of tours or anything at all possible. But the opportunity, is really one for us, because the destination is automatically offering an automatic room upgrade. And also children, also for those properties who do offer for kids to stay, they will be staying free. So at this point in time, the destination is really promoting for the next 4 months, from April 1st to July 31st, for the opportunity for persons who would like to take a vacation specifically in our target market to come to St. Kitts and Nevis. Fortunately, I think it's well timed. A lot of persons also in the U.S. are looking for places to go post-Memorial Day. It's been summer. Many families have not taken a vacation. St. Kitts and Nevis, we've been doing a lot of PR in the marketplace. And so we believe, not that we are going to get huge numbers, but we will see incremental visitation for summer. And hopefully, we'll maintain the positive rollout of vaccination in the United States, and hopefully we can have a very, very blessed Q4 with increased air arrivals. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Raquel Brown from the St. Kitts Tourism Authority. At this moment, we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to have the part of the program where we hear from you, your questions, concerns, and suggestions. But let me share with you the numbers just before we go to that break. If you want to call in, you can participate by dialing 466-2666, 662-8674, 767-4765, and the international line is 1-239-645-4500. You can also send WhatsApp messages to 661-5683, that's 661-5683, or WhatsApp voice notes to 660-7168, that's 660-7168, and those numbers are listed at the bottom of your screen for your convenience. So we're going to have a quick word, hear a number of messages, and we'll return with Leadership Matters right after.
St. Kitts and Nevis, let's roll up to roll out. It's our best shot. Bless up, Dejo here, and I'm doing my part in the fight against COVID-19 by following all safety protocols and, most importantly, rolling up my sleeve for the vaccine.
So I'm encouraging you to do the same, because that's our best shot of protecting ourselves, our family, and our friends. So don't wait, vaccinate. Let's roll up to roll out.
Welcome back to Leadership Matters, which is hosted weekly by Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris. And this evening he is joined by the Chief Medical Officer in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Hazel Laws, Medical Chief of Staff at the JNF General Hospital, Dr. Cameron Wilkinson, and the Chief Executive Officer at the St. Kitts Tourism Authority, Raquel Brown. My name is Jacqueline Bryan and I'm your host this evening. And Leadership Matters is aired live on ZIZ Radio, Freedom FM, Vaughan Radio, Win FM, and Sugar City FM. It is also streamed live on the Facebook pages and YouTube channels of ZIZ and the St. Kitts and Nevis Information Service, also known as SKNIS. So you can look for the program there as well. The program is also made available on Spotify and Apple and Google Podcasts. And the aim is to reach you wherever you are on a platform that is convenient for you. So, at this stage, we'll go directly to the phone lines. I'm told we have callers waiting. So we'll take our first call for this evening. Welcome to Leadership Matters. You're live.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mr. PM and his team of experts. PM, I'm pleased to have you spend another Tuesday night with us, but I'll be very brief. Recently, today on the news actually, I heard that the United States was supplying some 60 million doses of vaccine to India. We know the situation with India, and it almost sounds as though they are unable to produce enough for their own needs. We get our vaccines from India, and I did understand that our dosage, which was 20,000, the first instance 21,000 minus 2,000, which went to Grenada, leaving us with 39,000. Those should expire sometime soon, and we do have need for exposure in the return of cruise ships. We have the CPL, and we have Culturama. What are we going to do in a situation like that? I know at one time we said that there was some $800,000 assigned by the Ministry of Finance to purchase vaccines, and the kind people of Taiwan had donated $600,000 US to buy vaccines. There seems to be no shortage of finance in that respect, but there may be a shortage of vaccines. So where do we intend to get vaccines from to meet the potential increase in demand over the next few months? Thank you.
Thank you so much for participating in our program. We'll take a...
Hello?
Hello?
Hi, good evening.
One moment. Okay, thank you so much for your patience. You're live on Leadership Matters. Hello?
Hello, good night, good night.
Okay, hello, good evening.
Yeah, good evening, Jackie. Good night, Ms. Bryan. And good night to the Honorable Prime Minister and the strong, good doctors, them, and the lady from the tourism department. I want to commend each and every one of you to come on this program, Leadership Matters, and really spread it out to the people of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, because that is what we need. Because some people say they didn't hear nothing, and nothing does go to them. Now, Mr. Prime Minister, I want to commend you and your cabinet for the strong work you all is doing in this crisis of this pandemic. I cannot say no better, I cannot do no better, and just say that to you all. You understand? You're doing a wonderful job. And, Mr. Prime Minister, my little question that when you know, you got football right now, and we have no community spread and nothing yet, and you know nobody could go in the park. I believe the park big enough that people go in the park and keep the social distance. Even the 200 people go in the park because it's a football match and people want to see the team play. Because but they are consistently calling. So don't put them a Friday time. If you see the crowd down there drinking and over 300 people, no social distance, no mask, nothing. I believe that they're going to the park, but they're going to know what the football game and enjoy themselves. Now, Mr. Prime Minister, again, I want you to just keep focus and listen to the people of the Federation. Because, Mr. Prime Minister, I don't know how you don't sneeze at the time, or how you name calling up every day on different radio station. Calling. But, Mr. Prime Minister, let me tell you something. Do not trust no one and come to you and say they're going to tell this and tell you that. There's a gentleman on a radio, with a radio talk show. And let me tell you something. He prays you up one way, and he's saying he begin you on your side the next way. Because anybody and that former government minister who don't like you and who want to see the same thing is up, I do not trust nobody with that former minister of government. And he said that the former minister of government is a friend. So I believe that every day come calling them and say all kind of things, just because maybe he want to get those rest in the cabinet, get them vexed, that the unity can last. But Mr. Prime Minister, I want you to continue to do what you got to do in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. You're doing a good job. May God bless you in the cabinet.
Thank you so much for your contribution to the program. We'll take another call. Welcome to Leadership Matters. You're live.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
How are you, Jackie?
I'm doing quite well. How are you?
Oh, I'm sorry. I would like to say good evening to the Prime Minister and his panel also. This question is for Raquel Brown. How are you, Raquel? All right. The question that I have, if you're aware that Seaborn usually go and dock over at it stream over at what do you call it at over by Mr. Sharp. Is that going to be the same procedure, or it's going to be downtown in Bastille? I'm calling as a taxi operator, and what I would like to know on the other taxi operators that have taken the first dose of their vaccine, would like to know, would we as taxi operators would be able to get a job? Because you know that there would be, as you said earlier, there would be contractors like the cantors and different folks. You didn't call any name, but I'm just calling name to let you know, going to be taking up a bit of these folks. And I would like to know if we would be able to get a job as taxi operators, private taxi operators. And Mr. Prime Minister, the taxi operators also, we really need help. So if you can do something for us also, we'll appreciate it very, very much, sir. You all have a pleasant night. I'll wait to hear you all answer. Thank you.
Okay, we can take another call if we have any other calls. Welcome to Leadership Matters. Good evening.
Hello?
Hello, you're live on Leadership Matters.
Hi, I want to preface this call by saying that I'm a physician. I live in New York. I've been here for about 22 years. And I was diagnosed with COVID in March of this year. And I was a little hesitant in taking the vaccine. And after doing my own research and everything, I decided to take it simply because I don't want any restrictions on me with respect to travel and, that sort of stuff. It seems to be that there's a lot of misinformation out there worldwide, and especially in St. Kitts, and a lot of people are hesitant in taking the vaccine. I don't know, for whatever reason, it's the thing is, it's your body, your decision. But my question really is there anything that that either the government or the public health sector down there could have done differently to sort of assuage or persuade locals to take the vaccine, because now you're at a stalemate where a lot of people are hesitant. The world is beginning to open up, and there's still some hesitancy in taking the vaccine. So again, what could be done differently, or what they can do now going forward to sort of convince? Everybody's waiting for the Cuban vaccine, and there's a whole lot of stuff going on. It's left to be seen whether the Cuban vaccine is even going to be accepted, or acceptable for people entering the U.S. or even for travel and what's not. So, again, what can we do differently going forward? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your contribution to the program and your questions. We'll take another call. Welcome to Leadership Matters.
Good night. And leadership really, really matters. I mean, tonight we need a part two, because tonight actually showing real leadership in Timothy Harris and his administration. Now, first, let me say it's a relief hearing that the 14 days have been reduced. The Prime Minister and his cabinet have listened to the people, and he have raised to the occasion by listening. But this is a man that actually showed good leadership, because he's listening to the people who elected him to do the job. And what lessons can we learn from the recent outbreak of COVID-19 cases in America? Doesn't mean Anguilla was good. So, I want to know what pattern, if anything, we can learn from what happened to them just recently. Ms. Brown, would you say, can you say how many cruise vessels will we receive from July the 17th to year end, seeing that the border is going to be open and when reduce COVID? We like to get some more meat on the bone in terms of our vessels coming from 17th. Also, this might be a bit far-fetched, but I've seen ads circulating today about CPL in August, and many persons want to come home, right? Would anyone be in a position to say by now, by then, that visitors who come to our shore and the period of quarantine, would the border be open? So once you have your food, you'll be able to come to St. Kitts and relax, because that's where the world is actually waiting for now. So I'm wondering if by the time August going down, if the country will be a bit more relaxed. And as you see, the Prime Minister is coming to taking the time. It brought me back to when you had the lockdown, and then we had partial, and then, it slowly opened back up. So we are now seeing that happen. So I don't know if it's going to be less from 7 maybe to 3, or from 7 it's going to go to no. Thank you very much, and Prime Minister, keep up the good work, because leadership really matters.
Okay, well, thank you so much, caller. We had some difficulty hearing you clearly because of the phone line. There was a constant beeping that was happening while you were making your points. So I got some of what you said, and hopefully other panelists got some of what you said, and I'm hoping that by the time we get to answering the questions and we put what we all got together, we could appropriately answer your questions. If not, if you feel as though we weren't able to, you can also send a message or try calling in again. We'll take another call. Welcome to Leadership Matters. Good evening.
Good night to you. Hello?
Hello, you're live.
Good evening to you and your panelists. Let me first greet the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Timothy Harris, and commend him for the good job that he's doing. I also want to commend Dr. Aethelord, Dr. Wilkinson, and your other panelist who is the head of tourism, Miss, I forget her name, but I want to say I entered the Federation recently, over a month now, and so I've been out of quarantine now over 2 weeks. And I want to commend the protocols. I think the protocols are working, I would have entered from a CARICOM country that has been suffering, Jamaica, that has been suffering bitterly with the situation of COVID. And I also took the decision to take my vaccine because I'm a frontline worker back home. And I want to urge the people here to take the vaccine. It's not something that everybody wants to go ahead and do, but it is something that is going to save lives. I have seen and known friends back home who have died while I was in quarantine just because of COVID. Our hospitals are flowing. The bed, we have no bed capacity. And I think Dr. Laws and Dr. Wilkinson could confirm this coming out of the Ministry of Health back home. There are a lot of challenges, and I'm urging people to take the vaccine, to take the AstraZeneca, which we are taking in Jamaica, which it shows to be they are just minor effects. You would have maybe muscle aches, nausea, and that just only lasts for 2 days or 3 days, because it is important that one does this to reopen the economy. If you want your jobs, let's take a job.
Thank you so much for your words of encouragement and sharing your own experience with us, caller. We appreciate your contribution to the program. We'll take another call. Welcome to Leadership Matters. Hello? Okay, we can move on and take another call if we have another caller. Welcome to Leadership Matters. Good evening.
Greetings to everyone there.
Hi, good evening. You're live.
Greetings to our Prime Minister.
Greetings to you.
And the doctors and the lady from the Tourism Department. I have 2 questions I would like to put to the panel, please. Dr. Cameron, some time back in regular briefings, a question was put, because we are over a year now on this pandemic. So a question was put to you, sir, concerning vaccine, and respond to the question at that time. You said the vaccine more needed out there than in here. And at the time, cases was high out there, and our country's situation was as it is today, then. So I'm asking you, when the rolling out of the vaccine at the time, then, what was your feeling would have been, what the response, how you feel the response from the people would have been with the acceptance of the vaccine then, from making a comment like that, a very strong comment, and seeing how your people defended and stay strong and protect within the protocols. What was your anticipation of the acceptance of the people accepting the vaccine then, to the situation as we have it is in our country today? Mr. Prime Minister, you've been doing a good job, no matter the critics. You take the country with your team from down the dark road, and we are going forward. We are going forward. We have difficulties. We have challenges. The coronavirus taught Caribbean countries to readjust their economies. I'm asking you, sir, within the time of the coronavirus, do you feel we are putting ourselves in a position to diversify our economy instead of just a dependency on service tourism? For instance, I know I heard you mention money put into agriculture, but don't you feel that government itself could even put a hand to market agriculture to make it much more feasible and more foreign export, that we can get more currency from that end too? That's the question I'm asking you, sir. Do you feel that we are diversifying our economy in a consistent way? Because in the Observer some time ago, the Premier of Nevis, she was asked a question concerning cannabis, and caption, "Slot on cannabis industry had cost us potential investors." So even that cannabis industry is a part of the diversifying economy. So do you feel that we are consistently striving to diversify our economy? Thank you very much.
And thank you very much for your questions. We have quite a number of calls on the line. We're going to take the ones that we have and then address them. So we'll go back to the phone lines. Welcome to Leadership Matters. You're live.
Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, thank you for having me. I heard a gentleman ask not too long ago, what can we do in order to get those who are hesitant to be vaccinated? Well, I have a very short information that I'd like to share. We do have voters' ID for those who want to pass the vote for elections. If they do not have a card, they cannot vote. So those who intend to prohibit the government from moving forward issue a vaccination card, and those who decide that they do not want to be vaccinated, they cannot get a vaccination card, and those who have the card will be allowed to participate in things that includes where you have to be vaccinated. It's just that. You have to just put your foot down and do what is required. They will have to be barred from certain football games and all those kind of things, anything with great crowds, or they will come across with tourists. So that's my input into it.
Thank you so much for sharing your input with us. We'll take another call. Welcome to Leadership Matters. Hi, good night.
Yes, I have a question, right? Now, my question is tonight, you're talking about if people get vaccinated, they would be allowed to go to like the games and everything like that, right? Now, remember now, some people have severe allergies and they cannot take the vaccine because of the pain. I'm one of them. Now, I'm a person who likes to entertain and dress up in mascot costumes. Now, if I decide, since I can't take the vaccine, would it be possible if I get a negative test? Can you folks make like an exception for me if I since I can't take the vaccine because I'm allergic to the pen? Can you make an exception to allow people with severe allergies, if they take a negative test, to go in to see the game?
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for your question. We've made a note of it, and I'll make sure somebody addresses it. We'll take another call. Welcome to Leadership Matters. Good evening. Hello? I think we lost that call. We can take another. Welcome to Leadership Matters. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi.
Yes, are you hearing me?
Yes, you're coming in clear.
Okay. I would like to congratulate the entire panel this evening for a wonderful job so far. Now, we heard an announcement earlier today concerning the CPL. And during that program, we heard about, I think it would be the 15th of next month, the different sports, different games, they would have at least 50% capacity in terms of spectators allowed. Now, I'm trying to find out, how would they know that the persons who are coming in as spectators to those games are fully vaccinated? Could you explain that for us? I'll appreciate it very much. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you so much. Okay, at this time we don't have any further calls, and I think we might have to just take what we have for now. We have quite a number of questions that we have to address. I want to say I think I heard lots of new voices to the program this evening, and we appreciate you participating so much and taking the opportunity to put your questions and concerns to the experts. So we can begin from the top as we've gotten the calls, where the first person asks, where will we get vaccines from to get all the persons required vaccinated? A question about vaccine supply.
I'll start off by answering because the person in asking the question said something that was false, in that they said that the U.S. was given their 60 million doses of AstraZeneca vaccine to India, and that is incorrect. The information that came out was that the U.S. will be donating the 60 million doses to other countries, not necessarily to India alone. And so St. Kitts may be at the table also to receive vaccines from them. It is also incorrect to assume that because there's a crisis in India, that vaccines will not be available from the Serum Institute, because they have commitment and they supply vaccines around the world. There are also other vaccines in India, like the Covaxin that is made by Bharat Pharmacy, and they also import vaccines from Russia. And so there are going to be other countries that will be coming to their aid. So just because there's a crisis in India, it doesn't necessarily mean that there will be a shortage of vaccines available to us.
So there's no need to worry about whether or not we'll have enough vaccines to get the required amount.
People to use what is here. Before we begin to look for more, we must use what we have in stock. That must be the first priority, and we need not look too far down the road. We have available, and those are what people should be getting in line quickly to take.
Thank you so much. Yes.
I wanted to add that the Ministry of Health and the government, we are actively approaching other, seeking access to vaccines through other means. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Yes.
Could I just address a vaccine question that was addressed to me?
Sure.
So we'll just wrap it up there. In that there's a caller who mentioned something that I would have said almost a year ago. And I need to put it into context because I understand clearly what it was, in that there was someone who asked a question as to what would happen when vaccines became available and the first world countries were using the vaccines and we did not have any available. And I mentioned then that what we had to fight the COVID-19 disease then were the non-pharmaceuticals, and we needed to continue using the non-pharmaceuticals. And even when the vaccines arrived, even if they were being used first in the first world countries, we would continue using the non-pharmaceuticals until the vaccines were available to us. And that is exactly what happened, in that when the vaccines came on board, they were being distributed in Europe and North America first, and we continued using our non-pharmaceuticals until the vaccines became available to us. And now that the vaccines are available to us, persons need to step forward and take the vaccine. So I had nothing against the vaccine. My point was that we needed to use what we had available. Back then, we only had the non-pharmaceuticals. Now we have vaccines, we need to use them.
And he really was asking if you think that your comments would have had an effect on persons' mindset when it came to taking the vaccine. Do you think that was the case?
I don't think so at all. You know, I've been for vaccine all my life. Yes.
And 1 year ago, the advice has been consistent that until we get the vaccine, we have to rely on the health protocols being followed faithfully, whether it was the frequent washing of the hands, the masks, etc., the physical and social distancing. Those were imperatives in the absence of the vaccine. So 1 year ago, we had said that to people. The best shot would be to get a safe and reliable vaccine. We now have that. So there's an urgency for people to move to that next phase. Vaccine has been around for all our lives, those who are living, and for hundreds of years before. They've all helped to cure and in fact to contain serious diseases. And the safety of them, particularly given the stage we are with scientific knowledge, we can rest assured that the vaccines that have been approved by the World Health Organization, they're all of good quality and their reliability will be sustained.
Mr. Prime Minister, since you have the floor, we can go to the caller who asked you specifically if something can be done to assist taxi drivers.
Well, perhaps Ms. Brown is being paid to assist the taxi drivers. We'll ask
the Prime Minister would give that question to me.
Generally, the government, of course, will always be a compassionate one and sensitive to the concerns. And we continue every day, every week, to look at certain options that we can do to boost the livelihood of those who are here and to help people to thrive even at a moment of difficulty. As we do that, we expect also that taxi operators will become creative. We still haven't seen a lot of creativity. We still haven't seen them plying and coming up with new options. They're basically waiting, as in the good old days where you wait at the circus. But certainly there are other avenues. We talk about the East Bus Terminal and the need for a new service, shuttle service, if you will, to take people in between the East Bus Terminal and down on the Bay Road and to other venues, to other supermarkets. These are things that they can do to earn something even at a difficult period of time. And I want to remind persons that when some taxi operators had refused to sign up a self-employed person, and there was a protest against them participating in the stimulus package, the government, from the vantage of humanity, vantage point, said that we will let them benefit. And so it is still a sector that is vulnerable, and we are looking at it day by day. We also want them to show their interest. And part of displaying the interest to participate when the sector is fully open up is for taxi operators to be the first in the line to become fully vaccinated. They must show signs that they are willing to help themselves so that others can be persuaded to render help to them. So nothing is off the table. Indeed, whenever we are facing challenges like this, my own viewpoint is that nothing is off the table. It's a matter of time. Timing is critical with these policy initiatives. So we think them through, we weigh them, and we weigh the timing of implementation. But Ms. Raquel, you may want to add something in respect to that.
Thank you, Prime Minister, and thank you for what you just said. I like to say this: with the restart of cruise, we need to manage expectations of all our stakeholders. Please remember Seabourn Odyssey, that will start on July 17th, is a smaller vessel, and it only takes normally the packs of 800 persons, and they will only be sailing at 50, maximum 60% occupancy. Also, we have to take things in, as the Prime Minister said, in stages, and it's about time. Timing will be everything, and for this to be a success, we do have to ensure that we're following the protocols. We do recognize that we have over 500 taxi operators. Some of them do have contracts with established entities, but there are also a significant portion of that 500 who are independent taxi operators. And so we are looking at all options with the Ministry of Tourism to see what we can do to work with the cruise lines for them to have tours for sale specifically for bubble vaccinated tours. I must say that what used to happen where taxi operators could solicit, that will not be happening in Port Zante, not because the Ministry of Tourism or St. Kitts Tourism Authority, we don't want you there. The issue is that with COVID, it cannot work. And also, please remember, this is a start to cruise. We are doing this very carefully. So the best way to achieve this with mitigating all risks so that we can continue to have Seaborn Odyssey come to St. Kitts and Nevis is to manage the process carefully. And so for the interim phase, the phased approach for Seaborn Odyssey, it will be bubble vaccinated tours, and we will be working with the independent taxi operators to find a solution for them to be able to offer their tours. But the thought where a visitor can come off the ship and just go for a tour just with an independent operator, as was done in the past, based on the rotation of the day, based on the first 25 numbers, that will not necessarily be how it will operate. We have to have a control mechanism in terms of how the tour is sold previously versus someone just coming off and necessarily taking the tour. Please note that Seaborn Odyssey will be coming to St. Kitts every week. It is a 7-day itinerary. Yes to the caller, it traditionally docked at Carambola. However, for this cruise that starts on July 17th, there will be 2 rotations. It will rotate between Carambola 1 week and it will go to Basse-Terre. Carambola will be the beach day tour, and Basse-Terre, Port Zante where we'll have vaccinated bubble tours only. And the reason for this is to stimulate economic growth. We recognize that if the persons just go to Carambola, that's a beach day. Persons really just want to go to the beach and enjoy themselves. However, we saw the opportunity where if they come off at Port Zante, that will be the day when they will be doing the other tours, such as our historical Basse-Terre tour. They will be doing Brimstone Hill, Caribel Batik. But these places, in terms of the tours, and our taxi and tour operators will have to be fully vaccinated. It's important to know that as of right now, as of July 17th, this cruise is booked in Seaborn until March next year. So it will be for the full winter season, all being equal. So there's an opportunity as we progress, and as the Prime Minister spoke to timing, we can see with bubble vaccinated tours the improvement of how we actually allocate the reopening of those entities that are really solely dependent on cruise. So please, I like to manage expectations. Seaborn Odyssey is a smaller vessel. It doesn't mean that we're not looking to other cruise lines, but we're starting small and we're ensuring that the success of Seaborn Odyssey happens for us and for all of the destinations involved.
Thank you so much, Ms. Brown. We have a question, and I think it's really about hindsight. The person is asking, is there anything at this stage the Ministry of Health thinks that it could have done differently and would do differently going forward to convince persons to get vaccinated, given the level of hesitancy and skepticism?
Okay, that's a very good question, Jackie. And the Ministry of Health at present, we have gone back to the table in terms of strengthening, or let me say ramping up, our national COVID-19 vaccination communication strategy and plan so that we can be more effective in reaching our people, empowering our people to make informed decisions in terms of accepting this vaccine. And as you would have heard tonight, we are presently providing incentives to those who are fully vaccinated in terms of a reduction in the quarantine time for inbound passengers, inbound air passengers who are fully vaccinated, and providing access to sporting activities and cultural events to those who are fully vaccinated. So these are just some of the ways in which we are trying to provide encouragement to individuals to accept the vaccine.
I think it's important for us to know, though, that vaccine hesitancy is a global phenomenon, and by us reaching 37% of the population with the first dose is significant, and we are way ahead of a number of countries. And so what we are combating here is nothing that's unique to St. Kitts and Nevis, and it is something that the entire world is dealing with. And that's why we say we are going back to the drawing board to see how we can get the vaccine hesitant. And there are some persons who are just under-vaccinated because it was not convenient for them to come to the clinics. And that's why we are going into companies, businesses, etc., and vaccinating persons. So we should see the numbers picking up pretty soon.
We have a question asking what lessons can be learned given the current situation in Anguilla.
We have learned a number of lessons, and I think the main one is, as a federation, we need to be more robust in terms of monitoring our borders, our porous borders. And I think this is an opportunity for me to reach out to everyone in the society. It requires an all-of-society approach, whereby everybody, we all have to be our brothers' keepers and monitor our borders. Because our people, our eyes are best in terms of monitoring, looking out for strange vessels, and looking out for strange faces in our communities, and reaching out to the police and providing them the information. I think we need to have zero tolerance in terms of undocumented migrants who would come into the Federation undercover and outside of our health and travel protocols. Because that's what happened in Anguilla, and we really don't want our health system to be overwhelmed in like manner.
I actually think a lesson that the people of the Federation should have learned also is that hesitancy and inaction can be just as dangerous as the virus itself, because in Anguilla, they had reached 5,000 of their 7,000 threshold, and within 2 or 3 days they were able to vaccinate 1,900 persons, and so persons were in long lines waiting for hours to be vaccinated once they heard that there was community spread. And here in St. Kitts, we cannot wait until community spread occurs before we come forward and get vaccinated, and we keep saying that it's only a matter of time before the virus arrives and before we hear that there's somebody coughing and sneezing somewhere on the island and we have community spread. The way we will protect ourselves is by coming forward and getting vaccinated, so that even if 1 or 2 cases come, persons will not get seriously sick, persons will not die. And so the lesson to be learned is that we need to move and move quickly before we get community spread.
I want to add that the 50 additional persons who were recently identified in Anguilla, they may have been waiting, but they ran out of time. They caught the infection. And so there are persons who are adopting a wait-and-see approach to accepting the vaccine. And we need to recognize that you can run out of time.
Given the reduction in the quarantine period, what would you say are the benefits to this?
You mean reducing the quarantine time from 14 days to 9 days for the inbound air travelers who are fully vaccinated? So travelers who are fully vaccinated will be more encouraged to come to the destination, for one.
And I think one of the questions that was asked by the caller where the beeping was coming in, he was asking when it's going to move from 9 to 6 or 5. And it will move down the more persons in our community gets vaccinated and the more we get to herd immunity. And so the decrease in the quarantine time is actually in the hands of the people of the Federation and St. Kitts and Nevis. We chose 9 because that's a safety blanket that we have, bearing in mind that only 37% of the population has had the first dose. But the more persons who come and get vaccinated and the closer we get to herd immunity, the more we can reduce the quarantine period.
But let me just share that particular caller, I recognized a voice and I reached out to them and I explained the situation we had with hearing all of their calls, and I asked them to send me a message with their questions, and they did. So that's where I was able to get that from, because it was a real struggle trying to figure out what they were saying. And so there are other 2 questions from that particular caller. Asked Mr. Brown specifically, can you say how many cruise vessels we can expect from July? They gave a specific date, July 17th to year end. And CPL is scheduled in August. By that time, can a further reduction in quarantine be expected, or can we expect to see quarantine be done away with altogether?
Well, I would just
like to say, just to speak to the competitive position for St. Kitts and Nevis, as both Dr. Laws and Dr. Wilkinson keep saying, vaccination really helps us all. I cannot stress enough for the tourism industry. While we know there is a delay in the number of persons getting vaccinated throughout the Federation, I am really pleading with our stakeholders to go out and get vaccinated. We have seen where at this point in time, with just 37% of the population vaccinated, we've seen a reduction in the quarantine requirement for air travel specifically. This allows us to be more competitive because, to be fair, St. Kitts and Nevis, when you looked at the other destinations, they have changed their protocols from last year, I think June, when some of them reopened several times in terms of what testing requirements before you enter, what do you do in terms of quarantine until you're allowed to leave your room at your specific hotel. We've seen that regardless of what has happened in these destinations in terms of community spread, persons still went to those destinations. And it was because of the very fluid situation as it spoke to the protocols. For us, we can't take that risk. So what we're saying is that to ensure the quality of life that we now enjoy, in terms of there has been no deaths, we've had no cases for a couple of weeks. How do we maintain that? For the only way, in my opinion, and from where I see this specifically, for us to really have tourism be competitive in the global market space and specifically in the Caribbean, we need more of our tourism stakeholders vaccinated. Can you just imagine if every team member that worked at all of our hotels, all of our attractions, all of our tours were vaccinated? How we would be able to establish corridors of containment and movement for our stayover visitors and our cruise visitors, ensuring that protocols are followed. It will make it so much easier. However, at this point in time, that dialogue cannot happen because we're only at 37% total vaccination, and I can say the number right now for tourism. We only have about 650 persons by the Tourism Authority records in the tourism industry that have been vaccinated. If you are vaccinated and you haven't yet called us, please call and ask for Shamari Murillo at the St. Kitts Tourism Authority, 465-4040, and let her know that you've got your first vaccination, and she'll give you the details for other information. However, we have to reopen, and we're reopened, but to be more competitive, we need vaccination. There is no way out of this. We see everyone racing to get vaccines. There's a reason why it's in demand. Our number one source market is the United States. They're ensuring that their persons are vaccinated. Can you imagine if the United States, our main source market, did not have vaccination? I can't even begin to think about it. So I'm really pleading for tourism, for many of us who, for the last couple of years, we've seen the benefits of how it has affected our life here in the Federation. I am pleading with you to rethink, ask questions to the medical personnel. Please don't just go by what is on the Facebook post or on the WhatsApp share. Please, there's a lot of positive information out there, and I'm looking forward to my May, I think, 5th shot. As it speaks to the number of cruises between July 17th and December, specifically for Seabourn, I'm going to have to add up that number. Yes, there are discussions with other cruise lines to come to the Federation. However, there is a challenge in the cruise industry as it speaks to cruise lines in terms of vaccinating their crew. It is a challenge because, as I said, the OECS and Barbados, we are requiring that both cruise passengers and crew are vaccinated. So at this point in time, if you think about many of the ships that are not of the seaborne size, which probably only requires 400 crew members, and so they would need 800 vaccines, we're talking about some of the ships that even if they're 3,000 packs, they do have crew on there that are about 1,000 to 1,500. So they would need 3,000 vaccines in total. And we have to be understanding of the fact that while they would like cruise to resume, they have to vaccinate their crew. We have seen from some of the cruise lines that where they have launched itineraries in June, they have had to reschedule them for much later in summer because of the vaccination rollout. We do hope that as it relates to the U.S., as more and more persons get vaccinated, maybe the restrictions will be reduced and they will allow cruise lines to have their personnel vaccinated. So thank you.
And what about CPL? We have CPL scheduled for August, so the caller wants to know if we can see a further reduction in quarantine time, or maybe no quarantine.
I will answer that, because based on the current rate of vaccination, the answer is no. I am hoping, though, that by hearing for you to enter, you have to be fully vaccinated. This will be an incentive for persons to come forward and get vaccinated. By hearing that you need to be fully vaccinated to go to sporting events, it will be an incentive for persons to come forward. And so if there is a bump in the figures and we get closer towards the herd immunity threshold, yes, you can see a change. But for now, the answer will be no.
Question whereby the caller asked, how would you know who is fully vaccinated in terms of entrance to the games? All right, and so once you would have received your second vaccine, Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, it will be recorded on your COVID-19 vaccination record card, and it would be officially stamped and signed. And so that would be your official record. It's authentic, and it would, prove that you are fully vaccinated. Now, let me just highlight and underscore the definition of being fully vaccinated. So, to be deemed fully vaccinated, you would have had to receive your 2 Oxford AstraZeneca doses, and 2 weeks would have had to, would have to elapse between the last dose and the time of your seeking entrance to the games. So to be fully vaccinated, you have to have the 2 doses, and 2 weeks would have to elapse between your last dose and your accessing either the fully vaccinated cultural event or the sporting activity. And you would have to have your card to prove that you are vaccinated.
At this time, we have a number of callers on the line, I'm told, and so we're going to take these calls, and then we're going to take a break, and when we return, we will address the callers and the WhatsApp messages. So we'll go to the phone lines at this time. Welcome to Leadership Matters. You're live.
Good night.
Hello, good evening.
Good night, Mr. Prime Minister and the rest of the panel. First of all, I have 3 questions in a nutshell. But the first question I will like and comment. 1, now, in respect to the disaster that is in St. Vincent, I listened to the comment of a couple of people about the helping hand in respect to the grant that you sent to St. Vincent to help the suffering people. And I will comment that you did a good job. And if I could have backed that with the same funds or more, I would do that. Now, in respect to that grant, and there are some people claim that they put in for their severance pay, and until now they have not received anything yet. Well, whatever is the hold up for that, so it be so. But some people don't realize, and I will call them cold-hearted, that situation could happen to St. Kitts too, whatever it might come, whatever nature brings. And St. Vincent is a direct need. The severance pay, yes, you're waiting for it. Everybody needs money. Now, just like in the United States, people depend on their income tax. And when they don't see their income tax, it's like a disaster at the end of the world to them. And the severance recipients, it looked like a disaster to them. They're claiming, I'm just giving you a feedback because I'll just be like an advisor too. Now, they claim they are suffering because they have bills to pay. They have this to pay, expectation. and bills require money. So, like I said again, the grant that you give to St. Vincent is a great, wonderful, fantastic thing. To relieve some of these people, or all of the people, since they cannot get their severance pay, is there any way you could work out with the suppliers of, such as the electrical company, the water company, a relief, while that amount of money has gone to St. Vincent? Because it's like you're shortening your pocket to help needy people, and I'm not saying the severance recipients are not needed too. They're claiming we were first, so we first should have it, instead of St. Vincent. But I said they have to make an exception because payback is a bitch. What goes around comes around. And that is the talk right now. So can you address that to give a calmer? Because as people say, they are vexed and they are mad. That is one in a question. Another thing is, how much more in respect to the COVID vaccination, how much more advice that people you can give, how much more marketing you can put out, how much more strategy you could put out for it to sink into the hardliners who are refusing to take the vaccine. These hardliners, they are holding up the economy, and they are a threat to the economy.
Hello? Okay, I think we lost that call. Unfortunately, your call dropped out. I'm so sorry to hear. We'll take another call.
Hello, good night.
Hello, good evening.
Hi,
You're live on Leadership Matters.
Good evening to everyone. My question I have pertaining to CPL and mothers who are breastfeeding. There are some people wondering, seeing that it is not obvious that they don't want to take the vaccine, but due to the fact that they're breastfeeding, they're saying that they can't take it. So what they're trying to figure out, is there something wavered for them in terms of going into the CPL games?
I'll ensure it gets answered. Thank you so much for it.
Okay.
Take care. We'll take another call. Welcome to Leadership Matters.
Very pleasant evening to you, Jackie, and to the Prime Minister, as well as all the other panelists and all listeners everywhere. I would like to make a short presentation on the vaccine situation with a brief question. And the question is, would it be possible to abandon or do away with the quarantining of persons coming in for a fortnight, 14 days? And if the persons came from a country where they were tested negative, they can be allowed to go, free to go. Because the person would have come in from Canada, the United States, United Kingdom, or wherever they came from, and they would have tested negative. So I'm saying if they can prove that they were tested negative, why quarantine them for a fortnight, 14 days? To me, that's wasted time. That's time that can be utilized to acclimatize to the country and reunite with their family and get things done. People have a lot of things to do, so I really and truly don't see why people should be wasting so much time in quarantine if they're negative. That is my point. And I believe also that the quarantine period should be reduced by 50%. So rather than 14 days, let it be a week or 5 days. So much for that. While I am here with the Prime Minister, I would like to touch, please indulge me and allow me to touch a bit on the infrastructure of the country with respect to road rehabilitation. We have seen the rehabilitation of the island's main road. It's a project that had started probably close to 3 years ago, and it was slowed down by COVID, wicked COVID. I am saying that it is really and truly disheartening that we as bus drivers have to be struggling so much on the western side with the incomplete roads, the roads that are not yet completed. I would like to find out when they are going to complete those roads. And in the meantime, I want to suggest to the Ministry of Public Infrastructure, responsible for roads, that's the roads division of the Ministry of Infrastructure. The Ministry of Infrastructure, Public Infrastructure, Public Utilities, they are responsible for the roads. And I can say here, as a bus driver for the past 7 years, that we have some ditches and patches around the country in areas where the roads have already been resurfaced. Whenever I talk about that, we have some people like Rockefeller who would come on radio and talk things about government this and government that. We have to bear in mind that the purpose of a government is to provide social services for its people. We as the owners of vehicles and drivers of vehicles, we pay.
Okay, I think that call dropped out. Thank you so much for your questions and your observations and for sharing that with us. We'll take our final call if we have any additional callers on the line. Welcome to Leadership Matters. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening to our moderator and the panelists, and a special good evening to the Prime Minister. Now, PM, this is Carlton Carl Esther Azariah Buchanan, Sandy Point, Mount Idle. I just had to call in because I would like the people in the country to know you is the man for the job. You're doing a great job, PM. The vaccine rollout, the protection of the virus, you're doing a great job, PM. PM, and I also would like to thank you, my parents are right here next to me, for the third visit of the year to my parents and myself. You are the best captain we got for this ship, PM. And I think you deserve another 20 more years of securing and keeping this federation safe and secure. PM, have a great evening. Take care of yourself. We love you. You are the best ever we ever elect into office. And we're going to keep you there for another 20 years. Thank you, PM.
Thank you so much for your contribution to the program. We don't have any additional calls at this time, so we're going to take a quick break. You'll hear some important messages, and when we return, we will address the callers, your concerns, your questions, as well as our WhatsApp messages. So stay tuned.
The rebuilding of tourism starts with taking the vaccine.
I'm taking the vaccine for a healthy nation.
I for sure will be taking the vaccine.
I am taking the vaccine because it's the best way to get back into full swing. Stay safe.
I've taken the vaccine for my family, for my friends, for my community, and for me.
St. Kitts and Nevis, let's roll up to roll out. It's our best shot.
I will take the vaccine because building defenses against COVID-19 is a team effort, and we are all a key part of that defense.
I definitely will be taking the vaccine when it's my turn.
I will be taking the vaccine as it is an important tool in the fight against the pandemic.
It is important for me to vaccinate to ensure that if I do become infected with the disease, it can prevent hospitalization. In addition, it also helps with herd immunity.
I will take the vaccine to protect myself, my loved ones, my clients, my co-workers, my community.
St. Kitts and Nevis, why do we need to vaccinate? Kenisha? So we can jab COVID-19 away.
Yeah. I know we can make it. It's only just a phase. Once we're vaccinated, and everybody gonna be safe. Everybody gonna be safe. One kind, yeah. One people. We are roll up to roll out. Yeah. Cause no man's alone. Do what's right. Alright. Cause I love you. Brother, my sister. And we're in this together. My sister, my brother. I don't wanna lose you. I love you too much. I think it's better for us, yeah, yeah. It's better for us, yeah. I don't wanna lose you. I love you too much, yeah, yeah. It's better for us. Tell your mommy to roll up, to roll out.
Bless up, Dejo here, and I'm doing my part in the fight against COVID-19 by following all safety protocols and, most importantly, rolling up my sleeve for the vaccine. So I'm encouraging you to do the same, because that's our best shot of protecting ourselves, our family, and our friends. So don't wait, vaccinate. Let's roll up to roll out.
Welcome back to Leadership Matters, a program hosted weekly by the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. And this evening, he is joined by the Chief Medical Officer in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Hazel Laws, Medical Chief of Staff at the JNF General Hospital, Dr. Cameron Wilkinson, and Chief Executive Officer at the St. Kitts Tourism Authority, Raquel Brown. And it's been quite an interesting and engaging conversation here this evening. We have quite a number of questions. We are going to try our best to have the panelists answer all of them. So we are going to address firstly the matter of CPL. We've had a number of questions regarding that upcoming event. I know people are quite excited to have learned that I think St. Kitts and Nevis will be hosting the entire thing. Very exciting news, and everybody, of course, is interested in participating. So what are some of the things in response to the questions we've gotten, like can a mother who is breastfeeding attend the competition? Will they get a waiver? Concerns about nursing mothers taking the vaccine that you can address here, doctors.
As it relates to CPL, it's important for us to remember that crowds can still be super spreader events. And what we are saying is persons who are fully vaccinated, these persons can attend the games, and that will significantly decrease the risk of it becoming a super spreader event. If, however, you are pregnant or breastfeeding, and if you're breastfeeding, it means that you have a baby, and you cannot be vaccinated, it means that you need to not only protect yourself, but protect your baby. Therefore, you need to stay away from these events. And so there would be no waiver for anyone who is breastfeeding. There is somebody who said that they had allergies and they cannot take the vaccination. Well, first of all, persons who have allergies, they can take the vaccine. It's only if you're allergic to anything within the vaccine itself, which is very rare, that you cannot take the vaccine. But if you so believe that you have significant allergies such that you cannot take the vaccine, then you will fare even worse if you got COVID-19. Therefore, you should be staying away from crowds and you should not be at the games.
That person who mentioned the allergies, they really did ask as well if they took a test and it was negative, could they attend the games, seeing as they're here and they don't have the virus?
Yeah, we said that only fully vaccinated persons could attend the game, and that is it. I think it was quite clear, fully vaccinated persons. So if you're not fully vaccinated, you can't attend the games.
We have a question, Mr. Prime Minister, that asks, do you feel that we are putting ourselves in a position to diversify our economy at this time?
Yes, we definitely are, and this process takes time. It is difficult in a small island, small country, to follow multiple paths of diversification of the economy because they are obviously size constrained. It's difficult, for example, to engage in significant manufacturing for local operations based on your sheer size. So that process has been moving, and it is a work in progress. We continue to speak of tourism. Tourism will be with us forever, perhaps not at the same level of contribution as it is now, perhaps even enhanced. But within tourism, there are also a lot of scope for diversification of our brand, of our approach to tourism, from sea and sand and leisure tourism. Education tourism has become a big thing for St. Kitts and Nevis. In Grenada, it is estimated that education tourism, the offshore university, contributes surprisingly 25% of the economy. That is huge, and that is significant. And so here we have Ross University as the main provider of offshore education of high quality within the Federation. That is a significant part of the efforts at developing the offshore education sector in St. Kitts and Nevis. We have to ensure accreditation standards are well placed, well developed, and are effective in implementation so that we can attract other institutions of higher learning. And of course, conference tourism is an area that has been developed, and in fact it has been a key participant in the build out of the Park Hyatt offerings, where a number of enterprises would have group vacations planned for some of their executive. That is another area of the tourism for which I think there is capacity and scope for us to diversify. Health tourism is going to loom large in the COVID and post-COVID world. And we have already had some elements, rubrics of that here in St. Kitts and Nevis, where there are facilities that want to, and even locally managed facilities that are going to be offering high quality service, dental service, and other forms of support in healthcare. And that is going to be important for us. In agriculture, the agricultural sector largely is about crops, livestock, and fisheries. Beginning last year, we begin to see some rebound in the agricultural sector generally. Fisheries output, in spite of a 83% loss in production in April of 2020, recovered with a 4% overall increase. Post-COVID, post the April lockdown, as a result of the stimulus package, we saw a significant number of persons re-engaging in fisheries. I got some stats this week from the Director of Marine Resources, and I was surprised to learn that we have 1,200 plus registered fisher folks. That is significant, and that is growing. And over the last year, it has grown by 100. I guess as people find alternative ways for self-employment. So this is significant. And for me, part of it really is for crops and livestock and fisheries to contribute more to food security, reduce significantly our imports of fresh produce into the country by having that done locally, creating employment, creating incomes for persons resident here. That to me is going to be critical. The marijuana industry is one which we have begun to work on. And we have to look at the history of this, because marijuana has for long been prohibited in terms of a product in which one could engage across transboundary, and that has put significant restriction. It had been prescribed by the United Nations, and as a result of it, banking prohibitions. In Jamaica, for example, which had been one of the first within the region, one of the things they had to confront was that the banks were not going to accept deposits from persons who came in and say, I am a marijuana grower, because it was considered an illegal activity and you do not want to lose your banking relationships. I think with recent movement at the UN, where I think that broad prohibition against it has been eased or removed, that has made it easier. And certain development at the level of the federal government of the United States to remove the prohibition would act in to further enhance efforts at development of a marijuana industry. This has to be an industry for export, really. And so we need to ensure that the shackles and the movement of funds which hitherto are in place are being eased, and that we can develop credible testing facilities to show that our product is well placed. And this is something that we are working on. Since last year to now, we now have a board headed by a businessman, Ernest Amory. It has been meeting regularly. I believe they had met at least 4 times for the year. It now has a CEO in place, and there are 2 other members of staff that we are recruiting for the authority, all with a view to enhance our movement there. It is a new industry. It will take time to ramp out, but we believe that we at least are working or moving in the right direction with respect to that. And finally, one new area in which we have to do more work jointly between the Ministry of Tourism and the new Ministry of Talent Development will be the film or the movie making industry. We were lucky this year, as a result of our track safety record, to have attracted 7 movies to be done here in our federation in 1 year. And we want to build upon that for next year and going forward to put more, as a result of the lessons we would have learned, to put more resources in place for us to become one of the premier destinations for movie making. So yes, we are on the right track, and we are moving to get further diversification of the economy. Challenging as it is an imperative for the future.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Prime Minister. We have a caller who suggested prohibiting persons who refuse to take the vaccine from participating in certain activities and events, but the caller also suggested maybe going as far as preventing them from voting. Anybody would like to comment on that?
I don't think you can prevent anyone from voting. I, however, went through the role of whether or not vaccines can be mandated. I believe that we have some things in place already, from what the Prime Minister said about the vaccinated persons being able to attend certain events and the increase in caps that will come as a result of vaccinated persons being able to attend these events. But I said also that the penalty can't be too harsh, and so we need to make sure that we have the least possible alternative to make sure that persons do what is necessary.
We have a question. It's not vaccine related, but it was put to us. The person is asking, say, that we know that there have been some issues with regards to the severance payments, and they have asked if a relief package could be put in place, maybe by working something out with institutions like the Water Department and SCELEC. Would you like to respond to that, Mr. Prime Minister?
Ideas are welcome, and again, my approach, nothing is ever off the table. It's a question of timing. I've learned through life that there is never a bad idea. It's a timing of it. And so some of the things today we say can't work, next year they may be very workable. timing is critical with respect to this. I want to make the point, though, that the payment or the lack of receipt of persons for severance payment has nothing to do with an unavailability of finance. My government has budgeted $40 million for severance payment, and so far we have paid out nigh $30 million in severance payment. So it's not a lack of funding, and more than half of those claims have been processed. My government has taken the step of adding to the staff at the Labor Department to process these claims. The difficulties that people are having has nothing to do at all with money. Money is not a problem in terms of paying. I want to make that clear. The fund, however, has never been properly capitalized, and that is something I've said before. We are waiting actuarial studies and advice on how we should do that properly. Set aside $40 million, about $30 million have already been paid. So that is substantial. The problems we are having are, among other things, and we named them before, and it's perhaps a good time to bring back again the Labour Commissioner and the Minister of Health to deal with this. The problems we are having, apart from internal, the sheer volume, because you had over, at one point we had close to what, 5,000 persons. Never before could that volume of applications reach the fund. Even in the darkest day of the country, when we close an entire industry, the sugar industry, you would not have had that number of claims to process. So it's just sheer volume. And what we have done is to respond by providing additional resources to the department. I think the last time I was here, I was able to report that at least 4 additional persons have been brought on to assist with the processing of claims. And we have seen, it's still early, some improvement in the processing. The other restrictions in terms of how fast we go is that some persons are coming and they are claiming that I was working for John Brown. Where do we get the information to the verification? From Social Security. If John Brown has no record with Social Security, there's nothing that one can process for you. Because how will we be able to tabulate how long you work? What is your wage for a particular year? All these things become critical elements, and so a number of claims are awaiting that. We also had issues where inadequate information were given in terms of the form that is being filled in, and those had to be returned. We had situations where some persons had become involved in the country. They started their work program, quote unquote, being undocumented. And you're now having to go back to see how you're going to rectify these. Some of them, quote unquote, are not bona fide. Again, they came in, their status has not been regularized, and these are some of the more difficult ones. And we're attempting to do the necessary facilitation, taking again a compassionate approach to the situation. The story of the widow's mite was not about how much we give. We gave to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and will give to any country in distress to the extent we can have in regard to our resources. And it is the story of the Good Samaritan. A Good Samaritan must live within all of us. The fact that we share a meal with a brother who is hungry does not mean that we have it in excess. Sometimes we forego our needs because we evaluate the need of the brother and the sister is greater at a particular moment in time than ourselves. So to make the comparison between a country where people are fleeing from death at the door, a very gruesome death they would experience if they had to stay where they are when all those lava flows come as it was speeding down into their communities, I think persons must reconsider their heart when they talk about giving to St. Vincent and we're not getting severance. They are unrelated. Unrelated. And it's not an absence of money again why you're not paid. And every shortfall in that fund, every shortfall, my government, the federal government, is the one that makes up and ensure that people get their money. And that is what we will continue to do. And we will work very hard. We of course, would have wanted that everyone would have been able to get their due by now. The reality is that there are difficulties beyond the Labor Department, beyond the work of the Social Security. And we have asked the Social Security to be more vigilant. We have asked those who are working to be more vigilant, because you can know whether or not your employee is paid if you make regular check at Social Security. Unfortunately, some persons only wait until their services are terminated when they now make a claim to learn that for all these years we have working, the employer hasn't paid. And some of them are in cahoots with their employers. They take the job knowing that the person for whom they work will not pay 1 cent to Social Security, and they wait until a difficult situation comes and then they make a complaint, and you have to go back years and years to attempt to get the records. Those are some of the challenges that we face. We face also the challenge that some persons also are making multiple claims. And these are issues that are stifling some of the genuine claims that we really need to get at in a quick way. The good news, however, the money is there. We have committed for it very early as part of our stimulus package, and we have brought more resources to the department to assist with respect to that. Today, for example, I got a WhatsApp from someone in Nevis. Prime Minister, I want to thank you. Now that I checked with Nevis office, they said they had the money is there for me, but they didn't have my right number. So there are multiple issues at play, and we really want to get everyone settled in terms of their severance payments.
Thank you so much for that. We also have one additional question that's not COVID related, the question of the road repaving project. Could you give... Are you in a position to speak to that? Very quickly, that is an ongoing exercise. And we all know, when they were on the eastern side, we had similar difficulties that are now being experienced on the western side. The movement of the pipe, for example, have created a delay in terms of persons being able to get to the road. When they attempt to shift some of the pipe, they recognize that some of them had difficulties, and new pipes had to be installed, and that changed all the dynamics. What I can say, we have every assurance from the project manager that that project will shortly come to an end. Indeed, the inconvenience is perhaps part of what we pay for what will be a most improved network of roads in St. Kitts and Nevis. We have one of the highest standards of roads anywhere in the Caribbean region, and we certainly would want to maintain that. And I ask that all who are suffering now to bear with us for a little while longer as the parties move more expeditiously to deliver one of the best roads on the western side of the country. And similarly, we are coming to an end with the fisheries project and the old road bay project. All of those are going to be done, be completed in the next couple of months, hopefully. We have a few questions here for the doctors. This one asks if a person with sickle cell can take the vaccine.
You answered that already. Yes.
Oh, okay.
But let me just expound. So if you are diagnosed with sickle cell disease, you can take the vaccine. However, we also recommend that if you have any doubts, go to your regular primary care physician and discuss the vaccine with that physician, and you know, receive the nod of approval to proceed in terms of taking the vaccine.
I know you answered the question about what it means to be fully vaccinated already. We have a question asking if someone who contracted the disease they have to wait a period before they can take the vaccines. However, just as the vaccine limits the possibility of a reinfection of the virus in individuals, that also pertains to individuals who have contracted the virus and have fully recovered. So they want to know if that allows someone to move around like a vaccinated person would.
Yes. Is no, in that we don't know how long and how much protection you get from natural infection, and it is recommended that once your symptoms resolve, you can get vaccinated, or even up to 90 days after having been infected. And so you cannot come into the Federation and say that you were infected with COVID-19 and therefore you are protected and free from quarantine, etc. The restrictions still apply.
I would also add, the literature suggests that once you would have been diagnosed with COVID and would have recovered, if you wait 4 weeks, you can proceed and get the vaccine.
Are the new guidelines for entertainment venues, given the new vaccination protocols, posted anywhere? Maybe on our website or Facebook page?
There will be.
There will be.
There will be.
Just so people know, this is something that was recently agreed upon.
Just tonight. Prime Minister just
what you got for in the opening remarks of the Prime Minister was actually breaking news, released right here on Leadership Matters for the first time, and they will be posted shortly. So we have a question that asks, what would be the overall cost to tour operators for random testing so that they can be made aware of how much extra expenditure they will have to incur?
$100 US.
The cost is $100 US for a test for locals, nationals, citizens.
Is there an authentication body for the vaccination cards, and what steps have been put in place here or anywhere else in the world to verify the authenticity of the cards presented?
So locally, it's the Ministry of Health. It's our responsibility to make sure that our COVID-19 database is well updated, and that, you know, all persons, all recipients of the vaccine, their data is captured in the database. And so those individuals who are fully vaccinated, I would have explained the definition, their cards would reflect this, and so it will be stamped. And so it can easily be checked through the database.
Vaccines have a batch number,
yeah.
And so that can be verified.
Dr. Wilkinson, sorry. This person wants to know if, given what you said, you made some remarks in your presentation about vaccinations and the possibility of making vaccinations mandatory, and even though you didn't say that would be the case here in St. Kitts and Nevis, this person is asking, if we do not reach herd immunity by the end of July, would persons be forced to get vaccinated based on what you said? Is that a consideration?
No, I never said that. I was making a case for mandating vaccines from a public health perspective, and was indicating that even businesses and some governmental organizations, they can request that persons be vaccinated. For example, in tourism, we are saying that persons have to move in a bubble, and the only how you can work in that bubble is if you're vaccinated, which is basically saying that if you're not vaccinated, you cannot work in that bubble. Okay? So we are saying that persons can only go to CPL if they're vaccinated. Okay? And so we are saying that for you to go to CPL, you have to be vaccinated. But the government is not coming up with a policy, I think, to say that persons must be vaccinated, although that is covered by the Public Health Act.
I think that's where the person wanted clarity. So thank you so much for clearing that up. Dr. Laws?
Yeah, and there's another question in the log. Will persons who are vaccinated in St. Kitts travel and return home without quarantine? That's a loaded question. So in other words, you can be in St. Kitts, residing here now. You can get your two vaccines, your 2 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine, be deemed fully vaccinated. You could travel to the United States of America for time period X. And just please note that during that travel, you will be at risk of picking up the virus, even though the risk, there will be a significant risk reduction in doing so. And so for that reason, upon return home to the Federation, you will be subjected to the shortened quarantine period of 9 days versus 14 days for now.
And in that same list of questions, we have someone asking, is it not possible for vaccinated persons to still get COVID and pass it on to non-vaccinated tourists?
Okay, very good question. And so if you are fully vaccinated by the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, you will then have an 83% risk reduction in picking up or contracting COVID-19. And now the science, the latest scientific information is confirming that there's also a significant reduction in the risk of such an individual transmitting the virus. So once you're fully vaccinated, there is as much, it's estimated to be about 60% reduction in the risk of your being able to transmit the virus after being fully vaccinated.
This person is asking if there's any information as to how long the vaccine will be effective for once you have had your second shot, and would one have to get a refresher in a later period, maybe a year later or 2 years later?
We have to understand that COVID-19 is a new disease. These vaccines are new vaccines, and we are still determining where we go with the science with the vaccines. And so for now, it's just the 2 doses, but there has been thought that maybe in a year or two, one might need to have a booster. The most important thing, though, is that the more persons who come forward and get vaccinated, the more we can eradicate the virus. If we have vaccine hesitancy and persons are refusing to get vaccinated, then the more the virus will circulate, the more variants will develop, and the more there would be a need for further vaccinations. And so everyone has to play their part in making sure that this virus is eradicated from the world.
And so instead of focusing on a booster and the possible need of a booster, I think we need to focus on the fact that we have so many vaccines in our refrigerators and we really need to use them up.
As I said before, let's utilize what we have now. And once a vial is open, it has to be used up. And
within 6 hours of opening.
Within 6 hours of opening. And
yes.
even the vials, they can only last so long in storage. So it's very important
that
the
shelf life is limited. So we really need to use up all that we do have by the end of June.
And our final question asks, why, I'm not certain, so I'll have to ask, why does a local have to pay the same amount as visitors for quarantine?
I'm not sure if that's totally accurate. I think I would need to back up and just explain that our COVID-19 hotels, certified hotels, some are certified as offering vacation in place, whereby the tourists can come into country and go to the hotel. They are confined to within the perimeters of the hotel and cannot leave. There are other hotels that are certified and approved as quarantine sites, whereby individuals come into the hotel, they go into their rooms, and they remain in their rooms for the duration of the quarantine period. And so I think there's a little bit of confusion in terms of that hotels, not all hotels, are approved to offer vacation in place. But so there's a difference.
I think another part of the answer is, if, for example, you came to St. Kitts and you choose to stay at the Park Hyatt or the Marriott, you'll be charged just like any other guest. There is no special hotel rate at these institutions for locals or foreigners.
Thank you all so much for taking on all of those questions. I know we had a range of questions, and I want to thank you for not omitting any. We will now have brief remarks in our wrap-up this evening. We've had quite an extended show, and I hope persons found it educational and informative. We'll begin with Ms. Raquel Brown, Chief Executive Officer of the St. Kitts Tourism Authority.
I think I will just end on what Dr. Law said. We have to use up the vaccines that we have by the end of June. And so I think it is critical for all of those persons who are thinking about how their lives feel constrained or whatever is taking place at this point in time. We all would like to have some normalcy in some way, shape, or form. And Dr. Laws just reaffirmed that those persons who have had their second shot, in terms of your ability to not spread the virus, is very critical. So I say to all those persons, there are all these questions. Please consider vaccination because there's no alternative. And for those persons who are querying, I just simply ask the question, what is our option? Because as we know, the options as we have now are really curtailing our way of life and many persons' livelihoods. So I please ask persons to get vaccinated. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Brown. We'll hear from Dr. Cameron Wilkinson, Medical Chief of Staff at the JNF General Hospital.
I'm going to be brief and just end by saying something that I said before, that herd immunity benefits society collectively, so it's only fair that the responsibility of reaching it be shared evenly among all members of society. And so for those of you who are sitting on the fence, for those of you who are being hesitant, you're not only putting your life at risk, you're putting the rest of the country at risk and holding everyone at ransom. And so I ask you to do the right thing for yourself, for your country, for future generations, because if persons before us did not do the right thing and went forward and got vaccinated against smallpox and polio, etc., we would still be battling those diseases. And so the persons before us did the right thing to protect you. You need to do the right thing to protect the persons who are here now and the future generations.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wilkinson. We'll now hear from the Chief Medical Officer in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Hazel Laws.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be empowered by the information we have provided this evening. Make an informed decision and accept the vaccine. When we vaccinate, we are helping to keep our children in the classroom. When we do our part and vaccinate, we are protecting ourselves, our children, and we are building a protective shield across our communities and across the whole Federation. Hashtag, do not wait, vaccinate.
Thank you so much, Dr. Laws. And finally, we'll hear from the host of the program, Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. I want to thank all of the panelists. Each one has added much value to the discussion that we had tonight as we roll out the final element of our Life First strategy, protecting our people, protecting their livelihoods. And we are at a critical point where the vaccination is the really critical tool now left for us to utilize effectively. This week, the world is focused on vaccination. And I want to read one of the key messages that have come out from the global effort at vaccination being celebrated. It says we have sacrificed so much to keep our loved ones and communities safe from COVID-19. Family reunions, hugs from loved ones, meals with friends and colleagues. Now vaccines offer us the clearest path back to normal, along with other measures like mask wearing and physical distancing, equitably protecting people with safe and effective vaccines will help end the pandemic and bring us closer again. Thanks to decades of research and advancing in vaccine science and technology during the pandemic, we will also be better prepared to handle diseases past, present, and future. I want to join those before me in commending to our population to take the vaccine and to do so with a sense of urgency. The time to do it is now. Tomorrow, we can't promise that it will be available. And we have to do this to protect ourselves, our households, our communities, and our country. I want to thank the task force, the health professionals who are here, who have sacrificed so much in preparing the country for COVID-19, in taking and advising the cabinet on some very difficult decisions which had to be made to keep us safe. The correctness of their decision is evidenced in the results. St. Kitts and Nevis stand alone among all countries as having the least number of COVID-19 cases among independent countries of the world, and of course having no deaths at this particular moment in time. We want to keep it that way, and keeping it that way requires us, or those of us who have yet to take the vaccine, to move post haste to do so. I want to commend all those who have partnered with us in the all-of-society approach. The church community, the business community, the NGO community. Together we have done this. Together we have St. Kitts being framed around the world as a model of a well-managed small island state. There is still a long journey to travel, but together being conscientious, being patriotic, and following the science as we have done so importantly and so early from the start can take us way into a post-COVID environment. So my congratulations finally to the over 12,000 plus of our residents who have gone forward to take their first dose of the vaccines. Congratulations for doing the right thing. And I urge the rest who are waiting, do not wait until it's too late. Now is the time to get vaccinated. May God continue to bless and favor our country. And may God continue to bless our people. Thank you very much for viewing.
And thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. And for those of you who would have missed the Prime Minister's opening remarks in which he made reference to the updated protocols for fully vaccinated persons, I'm told that you can listen to it again on ZIZ's YouTube page. It's already posted there for your convenience. I was your host, Jacqueline Bryan, and I would like to thank everyone who was listening and viewing tonight's program, especially those of you who took the time to call in and put your questions and concerns to our panelists. Thank you so much for making the program what it is. Leadership Matters airs right here on ZIZ at 8 p.m. every Tuesday. So until next time, take care.